On 107.9 FM, you're listening to The Locker Room on Stroud FM with Richard Joyce.
Good evening and welcome to The Locker Room on Stroud FM with me, Richard Joyce. We are broadcasting live on stroudfm.co.uk, 107.9 FM and at any time on the Stroud FM Listen Again service. I'm delighted to say that Paul Furley from BBC Radio Gloucestershire is the special guest here in the studio this evening to offer us his insight and opinions. Let's go then and welcome for the first time ever on The Locker Room actually, Paul Furley, who's our special guest this evening. Good evening, Paul. How are you?
Evening, Richard. Yes, I'm well. Managed to walk in through the snow, so being able to walk in, it just helps a little bit. No problems with the roads for me tonight.
Let's start then with Forest Green, Paul. Expectations high at the start of the season and ambitions have probably been set at an all-time high. Do you think Forest Green's current fourth position and playoff berth is sort of a satisfying return at this stage of the season?
They're in the playoffs. They're higher than where they were last season, and I think so long as they're showing progress season on season, which they've done under Dave Hockaday, then he can say they're improving. He can say to the chairman, I'm doing my job. He can say to the fans, look, we're moving forward, stick with us, we'll get there in the end. And if they do keep improving on where they are, then they've got to get playoffs, they've got to get promoted at some stage if they can keep improving. That's a big if. It's a strange division this year. You think last year Fleetwood ran away with it, didn't they?
Yeah.
No one's doing that this year, so it might be a little bit of musical chairs if it doesn't sort itself out. It may well sort itself out over the next couple of months, but if it doesn't, then musical chairs, who's on top when the music stops.
Do you reckon then that Rovers can maintain that form for when it does become the business end of the season? Because in terms of the football conference history of Forest Green, it's unknown territory as opposed to maybe battling against relegation.
Yeah, there was the 1 year under Jim Harvey, wasn't there, where they sort of dallied with possibly making the playoffs, and it fairly quickly became evident after Christmas that season, I think it was 2007, 2008, that it wasn't going to happen. Stuart Fleetwood lost his goal scoring touch. He had that so prolific start to the season. That's the closest they came. Last year they would have needed a real charge out of mid-table 10th to finish in the top 5. This year it's a little bit different. However, the man you've mentioned, Yemi Odubadi, he's had the experience of going up from the conference before. Magno Vieira, not necessarily involved too much with Fleetwood as much as he'd have liked last season, I'm sure, but he's got that experience. And the rest of the squad, you're looking at a young squad. Yes, there's not necessarily the experience you'd hope as well. There's not necessarily the fear. And there are some players in there who have played in the Football League, and the Football League will hold fewer fears for them than it would have done if you'd had a gnarled old squad of real experienced conference pros who could be thinking, well, this could be the biggest thing I ever achieve in my career.
That's a very interesting point you made there. And Rovers have, of course, supposedly spent a bit of cash on the squad, but you look at the other teams near the top at the moment, such as your Lutons, Wrexhams, Grimsbys and so on. Historically, they're big clubs and still get much larger attendances. So can Rovers realistically break through that mould and beat one of those powerhouses to promotion?
Forest Green have been breaking all kinds of moulds throughout the last 15 years, haven't they? It's just one of those clubs that if there's not something crazy going on at Forest Green, I kind of worry, because they're bucking the trend. All logic, all rules says Forest Green should not be where they are. They should not have got to where they are, let alone stayed there as the longest serving members of the conference. They do something up there that enables them to buck that trend, makes it difficult for other clubs. Forest Green, yes, they've had their troubles, but they haven't got that baggage of we should be a Football League club. It's only a matter of time before we get back to our rightful place.
James Norwood, he's been in and among the headlines recently thanks to his hat-trick heroics at Newport on New Year's Day. Does he look like the sort of player who could produce those quality performances he's shown on a regular basis in the Football League, say, even next season?
I think he possibly could do. The thing is, he's still young, and that means there's still room for improvement. He's still learning his position, which is something that both he and Dave Hockaday have said this year. He came to Forest Green initially on loan a couple of years ago, didn't he? And he got played out on the wide left, I recall. One particular game against Eastbourne was fantastic. Scored a goal and managed to get himself sent off. It was a 4-3 defeat, and it was just one of those games. I was there with someone who wasn't used to watching Forest Green at the time, and they said, is it like this every week? And I said, yeah, it is actually. But Norwood, because of his passion, he's a fan's favourite, isn't he? That's why people are so sort of interested in what James Norwood is doing at the football club. I think Can he? Yes, I think he can. I mean, when Dave Hockaday signed him permanently at the start of last season, he said, I think he gets it now.
We mentioned Eddie Ashodi right at the start of the show. He's been tied down on a 2.5-year deal. A big boost, surely.
Absolutely. And defenders at his age are not normally as good as they are at the level they're playing at.
Yeah.
Eddie Ashodi, though, very interesting character. I follow him on Twitter. He does seem to have a wise head on those young shoulders. Those are the sort of players that Dave Hockaday is investing the time in. And I think it's a very wise move. It issues a hands-off warning to any other clubs. It gives them continuity. And that continuity will give them time to develop. And that could be crucial.
Now he's been fit for most of the season. Are we beginning to see the best of Al Bangura, do you think?
Yeah, I think we are. Certainly last season, it was difficult at times to see how he was a class above. But what he does is he does the simple things so very well. His positioning's excellent. He's got that experience, having played the game at a higher level. He does the simple things: intercept, tackle, win the ball, get the ball, keep hold of it. He's got the good touch. And then, I mean, there was one game he took a ball down at shoulder height back in November. And how on earth, but he couldn't have controlled it any better if he'd have caught it. Shoulder height, drop it down, bang, and just play a simple square pass. And it's the simple square pass at the end that's the impressive thing about him. And if it's not the simple square pass, and he's got to play an attacking ball and it's a little bit of hit and hope, it's a percentage ball. It's a ball that's going to put opposition defenders under pressure. It's going to make them turn. You've got to have those people in there who can do the simple things as well. Bangura and Forbes, for me, provide that balance.
David Hockaday's got a flood of attacking options available to him, but he seems to have gone with Matty Taylor as his main front man. Can you see why ahead of maybe the other options?
I think Taylor plays the system the best through the middle. Right. I was a little bit surprised earlier on in the season that Ben Wright didn't get too much of a go through the middle. He played mostly out on the flank, which for someone of his size, you can see why a diagonal ball hit that way. It's something that Norway did, didn't they, back in the 1994 World Cup as a particular favourite tactic of Egil Olsen with Tore-André Flo's brother, Jostein Flo. That was the chap out on the right wing, and it was a tactic Norway employed a lot. Did he have the mobility out on the flanks? He had something that Dave Hockaday obviously saw that was a tactic useful for relieving pressure. Matty Taylor, less of a physical presence. What he's kind of learned for me this season, though, is that he can take the ball very well on his chest. He's prepared to use his movement, to concede a little bit of ground if need be, to take the ball and then go away from goal with it to retain possession. Taylor plays that as well as anyone at the club, and I'm surprised at that, but he does do it very well.
Jan Krakowski, he's become one of just 15 players of Forest Green in the conference years to have made 100 Conference League appearances. What do you make of that? Because during his time at Forest Green, he seems to have just progressed, got better and better.
Yeah, and that's really, really encouraging that someone can come in for a trial at the club, see that opportunity, take the opportunity, and then just improve. His fitness has improved as well as overall involvement in the game. I mean, he was very impressive. I first saw him in a pre-season friendly against Cirencester. Krakowski kind of turned that game around. He, unusually for Jan, as what we now think of him as a ball-playing player, but he was putting tackles in that game, and he seemed to be more willing to mix it in that game. And I think he got on the score sheet because he always does, doesn't he? He's Jan Krakowski. And
he's got a knack of it.
Yeah, absolutely. He's got that eye for goal and box-to-box ability to his game. So there's a higher work rate around the pitch. He's fitting in with the 4-3-3 formation. 9 times out of 10, you've got to find a place in the team for Jan Krakowski.
You've seen plenty of goalkeepers, no doubt, at FGR, but from what you can remember, does Sam Russell stand out as perhaps one of the top 3 or maybe even the best?
Yeah, he's certainly among the most professional. You'd have to include Nigel Spink as being among that most professional group. Sam Russell is, unlike Nigel Spink was, he was 40 when he was at Rovers, Sam Russell's in his peak years at the moment. What impresses me most is he's a cool character. He's pretty unflappable. James Bittner was very good. You think player of the season in his first year as well, in a struggling side. You just felt with Bits there was always that potential volatility, which Sam Russell seems to have over James Bittner. That's the advantage, that yes, he's just as brilliant at making the saves, commanding his box, the crosses, but a cooler head under pressure, and that is just very, very reassuring to see, especially in the conference where yes, you can have people who are brilliant, but they might be slightly erratic. Sam Russell, I think I've seen him make one mistake.
Well, Paul, it's been an absolute pleasure having you here on the show this evening. The hour, I think you'll find it absolutely flies by when you do it. It's great to have your insight and opinions as well. Really fascinating stuff. Thanks ever so much again. The Famous Fives,
Cheers.
They'll be coming up next here on Stroud FM, and I'll be back next Thursday at 7 p.m.